Lessons podcast, hosted by Angela Anderson.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel, Get Your Fucking Lessons People podcast. I am so grateful that you are here. You are appreciated. As I like to say, this podcast is neither a roadmap to success nor a comprehensive guide to enlightenment. What it is a mirror held up to the human experience, reflecting back the messy, beautiful truth of what it means to be alive. It is a reminder that no matter what happens in our lives, there is always a lesson to be learned. Why the expletives, you ask? Well, life is messy as hell. I just did a video prior to give you an example of how messy life can be. But it is beautifully, unapologetically messy. Life is unpredictable, it is chaotic, and at times it is downright ridiculous, like my latest experience. But I'll digress. Life does not come with a filter, and neither do we. Sometimes the deepest truths demand a little spice. And yes, that might mean dropping the perfect expletive. So, that is why Get Your Fucking Lessons, people. I want to put an emphasis on how important it is for us to learn our lessons as we move through life. So, around here, we talk about everything from A to Z. Nothing is held back. I call it the alphabet soup for the bold. Serving up stories, truths, and lessons. Maybe with a little spice, a little flavor. But what I really want to share is the lessons that I have gotten along my journey that may help someone else along their journey. So buckle up, my friends. You're in for a real treat. What we share here is real, raw truth, and sometimes they may be a little uncomfortable. But these lessons, although they may not go down easily, trust me, they will stick with you long after the sip. So, let's get into it, shall we? And get our fucking lessons. The lesson I want to share with you all today, it is about perfectionism. I call this episode Perfectionism and Why and How It Can Be Toxic. And then I want to share some ways that we can avoid and or prevent some of this toxicity. So professionalism, it really can be a silent killer of a relationship and of your success. Well, what do you mean? How can my being a perfectionist be toxic to my success? Well, let's get into it. So, I'll give you a scenario. If you're anything like me, you're an overachiever, right? Everyone sees you as this high achiever, this go-getter. But what they don't see is the crippling self-criticism and the fear that drives you. This hidden obsession with being perfect is not only damaging to your mental health, but it's also the real reason you may feel disconnected or unfulfilled. So, scenario. And this is probably more of a me story. So I moved through life in my professional life as a very serious individual. I take my work very seriously. I take myself very seriously. And everyone thinks, yeah, I have it made, right? They see the promotions and they see the bonuses and they see and hear the polished stories that I create. Also, I don't know how many of you know, I'm a published author and poet. At any rate, they see a steady crushing it vibe when it comes to me and the things I put out into the world. But what they don't see is the soundtrack on loop inside my head that says, not enough, do better, don't blow this. That plays, as I stated, as a constant loop in my head. That voice, it pretends that it's my edge, but the truth is, it's the sneak thief stealing my wins and pushing the people that I love sometimes too far to the side of the couch. Let's drag it into the light, shall we? So, corner office, alphabet soup behind your name. Maybe colleagues consider you a unicorn. I know I've been called a unicorn at work, which only drives me to work harder, do more, be better. And still, this morning, you woke up feeling like yesterday never happened, like you didn't achieve a thing. You tell yourself, once I hit the next mark, I'll be able to breathe. But the bar keeps rising and rising, and the compliments feel like IOUs, right? And the people closest to you feel like strangers who forgot your name. That knot in your chest, that's not bad luck. That is perfectionism wearing a tuxedo. Let's pop the hood and see why the engine of your life is constantly redlining. You're constantly getting a warning sign. And in my last podcast, I talked a little bit about how our bodies are screaming and we're not listening. That's one of the red lines, right? You're constantly getting this redlining and your body is even speaking to you. And you swap the emergency handbrake for a system that lets you fly without falling apart. I want to talk about this mask, right, that everyone loves, right? This image that is portrayed based on your need to always be perfect or for things to always be perfect. So you're in a conference room, the deck's tight, and this is more of a me. I'm in the conference room, the deck's tight, and jokes land, people nod, everybody's in agreement, and someone whispers, how does she always look so bulletproof? You smile for the moment, but inside I'm not really smiling. What I am doing is mentally flagging the typos, well, probably not typos because I am a perfectionist, but I'm mentally flagging the things that I could have done differently or that I could have done better with the promise of fixing them right after this meeting, regardless, and even though the customer's happy, the team's happy, everyone's like, yes, this is good, right? But I'm constantly improving in my mind the things that are already good enough, right? Exhausting, right? But I learned this rule very early. I think we all learned a similar rule early on, probably grade school. Gold stars, remember getting gold stars in grade school? That gold stars equal safe. That I'll be appreciated if I over deliver. That becomes a thin layer in your head when you are an overachiever. You're constantly cross-examining every single move that you make. Because the voice sounds like you, we assume it's telling the truth, right? It's your voice that's telling you you're not good enough. You didn't do good enough. Do it better. And you think that it's telling the truth. Spoiler alert, it's not. That voice in your head is not telling you the truth. The real cost that no one talks about. Let's talk numbers, for example. Think of them like the warning label on a powerful drug. So, a 2023 meta analysis found that people with high levels of socially prescribed perfectionism had 92% higher odds of severe depression and 76% higher odds of anxiety. Do you think I'm an anxious person? I'm highly anxious. As for relationships, the need to be perfect was a bigger predictor of misery than communication style. I'll say that again. The need to be perfect was a bigger predictor of misery than communication style. Your inner tormentor isn't just ruining the mood, it's incinerating your relationships, whether they're professional or personal. How? First, fear of failure. Fear, and I did a podcast on fear. False evidence appearing real. Fear of failure makes you sit on finished work until the window closes, because you're always feeling like you need to tweak it. You need to make it better. Secondly, your empathy short circuits. It's like you're using a faulty translation app. So, for example, your partner says they forgot dinner reservations because they were exhausted from a 12-hour shift the night before. But what you hear is, I don't care about you. Multiply that understanding by Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and soon you're arguing about breadcrumbs. I have seen examples of this in my own life. The really small, insignificant things become so overblown because of the need to always be perfect, right? High standards sound noble. They really do, but researchers call that the dark side or other-oriented perfectionism, because there's always light to dark and bad to good, right? There's a down to your up. These are the ebbs and flows of life. But other-oriented perfectionism, which shakes up relationships and can often lead to isolation. There was a study done at University of British Columbia that tracked 142 couples. So now I'm going to talk to you about perfectionism in your relationship. 142 couples for 2 years. The perfectionistic partner, say that 5 times fast, reported 34% lower daily relationship quality and had 29% more fights. So the person who is always the perfectionist is the person whose quality in the relationship is suffering. And they usually have no clue that they were the common denominator. I am a person, I like to think of self-awareness. So I am aware of who I am and my character traits. And I am keenly aware that I am part of the common denominator. But a lot of perfectionists appear to be wearing glasses that distort everything, and they think the world is crooked, never realizing the problem is the lens through which they're looking. I say that again. They think the world is crooked, but the problem is the lens through which they're looking. Friends feel it too. You're 30 minutes late to drinks because the podcast intro had to be just perfect, right? Everyone says, oh, no worries, girl, it's fine, we understand. But the energy is off because you're constantly doing this, right? Invitations then start to taper off. You tell yourself, they just can't keep up with my drive, right? Nope. They're just tired of tap dancing on your moving finish line. So, let's talk about burnout's sneaky cousin. We all know and have experienced burnout in our lives, right? Exhausted, cynical, running on fumes. I spend more days exhausted, cynical, and running on fumes than I do otherwise. But at any rate, perfectionism adds this nasty twist, right? Your foot stays jammed on the gas pedal. I brought this up too in a previous podcast because this is really a huge part of who and how I operate. Foot's jammed on the gas pedal even when the tank is bone dry. What can I do? What do I have to do? What's next? A Harvard Business Review surveyed 1,500 high performers. 57% hit clinical burnout, yet 86% of the 57 still rated their own performance as above average. These are the perfectionistic people. That gap between reality and self-image is like trying to navigate a cliffside trail using a map that says you're still safely in the parking lot. And that's where the heart palpitations and the 3 a.m. ceiling staring parties are born. I am hugely guilty of all of that. And again, going back to my previous podcast, when I talk about the heart palpitations and the things that our bodies are trying to tell us that are tied to our mental health and our physical, activities, if you will. So I want to talk about how do we rewrite this narrative, right? Like, what if the critic isn't a bodyguard, but a terrified kid collecting protection money? Stay perfect or they'll just reject us, right? That sounds brave. But the fee is chronic anxiety and empty apartments because your friends no longer have the wherewithal to support your perfectionistic traits. And once you see the critic as a frightened part of you, not the voice of God, the game changes, right? Once you realize that inner critic is just a frightened part of you. It's not God telling you to do or not to do, or you have to do more, right? So that's when the mental flogging starts. Pause and ask yourself, this is what I want you to do whenever, if you're someone like me, if ever you start to feel that way, pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve, right? Is this me or is this Mrs. James, my 5th grade English teacher, in my head? You have to put a label on these things as they appear as old programming, right? Naming the emotion is like flicking on the lights in a dark room. The scary monster that you imagine is just a pile of dirty laundry. The scary monster is just a pile of dirty laundry. Call out the critic. Call out the critic and watch it shrink. We are our own worst critics, as we all know. So now I'm going to share a practical toolkit that I think may be useful. It's something I've started to put in place because, again, this speaks volumes to me. I'm not going to dump 15 life hacks on you. Just 2 moves, 2 science-backed, doable moves that you can implement tonight. Move 1. Self-compassion, I know it sounds real cheesy, but self-compassion is important. It works like a kettlebell for your mind. A kettlebell for your mind. So, Christian Neff's study shows that self-compassion lowers cortisol and boosts resilience. So when the critic in you snarls, "You butchered that pitch," then I want you to swap in, "Ouch, that was rough. What would I tell my best friend right now?" Right? Because again, we are our own worst critics. So take yourself out of it. What would I tell my best friend right now? Try that. And then answer out loud. It's going to feel weird, but do it anyway. 3 minutes. Do that for 3 minutes. Move 2. The 70% rule. Kim Scott, an ex-Google exec, ships decisions when they're 70% ready. Right? Now, you've probably heard the 70% rule in relationships in another capacity, but this is different. So she ships decisions when they're only 70% ready. She applies it to emails, to text replies, to dinner recipes. And I know right now, thinking about that 70% of the recipe, your brain is probably screaming catastrophe, right? That's that inner critic acting like a car alarm, so sensitive that a falling leaf sets it off. Isn't that crazy? Data says that the remaining 30% rarely flips the outcome, right? So give it the 70%, try it. And what you may find is that the remaining 30% barely changes the outcome. What it does do is free up hours that you can be spending sipping those margaritas with your friends instead of re-editing tomorrow's PowerPoint for the 5th time in your head. So, I've got a 5-page PDF called the High Achievers Self-Compassion Toolkit that I'm putting into practice. It's free. There's no email gate. I'll drop the link below in the chat. Grab it if you want. Try some of the scripts on yourself and text me how it goes. Leave comments in the chat. Because I know there are more high-achieving perfectionists out there than we may even know, right? Tell you a little story about my partner. So he's a musician, and he writes his own songs, music. He plays all the instruments. He's never thought I would meet someone as much of a perfectionist as I am. And just the other evening, he's recording a new song, and we were just sitting conversating about it, and he'll add a mix or, increase vocals or add some drums or some keys or whatever. And then he'll record it, he'll go listen to it in his truck, on a speaker in the living room, 4 or 5 different places he'll listen. And then he'll go back to the drawing board. Because in his mind, it's not good enough to share some of his techniques. And I told him, this is just your process. I mean, the song was great at take 10, but he's on take 47. Seriously, literally on the 47th recording of this song. And I said, you know what? That is perfectionism, right? And it's so ingrained that it has become a part of his process, much like me and my PowerPoint deck, combing over any mistakes. It could be something as little as a comma or a period or a bullet out of place when everyone else thinks it's just wonderful. That's perfectionism. So there are a lot more of us out there in the world, I know, than we might even know. But it is damaging to yourself because, again, we are our own worst critics. And so try some techniques, as I stated, that removes that critical component, right? And treat it as if you were giving advice to your best friend, because we don't always give ourselves that compassion or that empathy that we might give to a friend. So try that if you're a perfectionist, right? One of the things we like to say in my 9 to 5, right, because we're agile and we're doing this huge, effort, is progress over perfection. Do a little, it may not be perfect, but you're making progress. Progress over perfection, right? And the ripple effect is that critic, that internal critic, and the benefits will spread like ripples from a stone dropped in a calm pond. When you ease up on yourself, everyone else will exhale too. So, for the next 24 hours, pick one area, maybe your workout or an email, the lasagna, and shoot for just 70%, right? Feel the itch, name it, and move on. It's not the end of the world. And then text someone that you love a question with zero agenda, no agenda at all. Something to the effect of, what was the best bite you ate today? These tiny little silly seeming moves create compound interest, right? Try it. You'll be surprised. In conclusion, perfectionism sold us a lie. It did. That lie is that self-criticism is the admission price for greatness. It's not. Science and your own weary body says otherwise. Swap that inner critic for an inner coach who wants you to win and lets you be human. You'll still chase big dreams. They'll just be fueled by self-respect instead of self-loathing. And one day, you'll look back at a life bursting with people who don't just applaud your resume, but they actually get to know you. Lessons, people. I hope you got one.